Hi everyone, good evening. So today we'll talk about NSGs, which is network security groups. Okay. So yesterday we discussed about vnet peering, how to communicate a virtual machine from one vnet to the another vnet. By default, whatever the VMs which we create inside a vnet, they will not able to communicate to the other VMs which are created in the different vnet. So yesterday we established a peering connection between two VNets so that all the VMs from one VNet to the another VNet can able to communicate. So now we will talk about network security groups. So just go to the Azure page, NSG in Azure. Just a brief introduction about Azure, NSG. So what is this network security groups? You can use an Azure network security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several types of Azure resources. For each rule, you can specify source and destination, port and protocol. So here what it says, security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network, which means so we create a VNet. So we create a VNet, and inside this VNet, we are creating multiple subnets depend upon the requirement. And in each subnet, we are creating a VM, one VM or multiple VMs we are creating. So here, filter network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. So in this VMs, whenever they are trying to access the other VMs. So here they did not mention specifically Azure VMs. They mentioned Azure resources. So not only the VM, there can be other resources like load balancer, virtual appliances like Azure backup, storage account, multiple things will be there. So that's why it's not specifically to the VM. But we'll take example of this VMs. So whenever we create a VM, by default, it can go and access this VM and it can go and access the internet also. So in the internet, if you have any sites, like for example, whatever the sites it may be, it can go and access the internet, which means by default, whenever we create a VM, automatically by default settings are applying so that these VMs are able to access the other uh, VMs, and it can able to go and access the external world also, right? So now in this session, we are going to talk about how to restrict that unnecessary ports, unnecessary access to the VMs. We'll discuss now. So NSG, same way, whoever like completed, what is this? AWS also. In AWS also, we have a security group concept. So here, NSG is network security group, and in AWS we have two concepts. One is security group concept and another one is NACL. Whoever completed AWS, they might know. Who don't know about AWS, just ignore it. Okay. Now here, two things we need to understand. Stateful in AWS, security group is called as a stateful and NACL is called as a stateless. And here, this is about Azure, and Azure doesn't have two things, only one thing we have, network security group, and it is called as an stateful. In between, once we start discussing about this, in between I'll explain you wherever it required at the time what is the difference between this stateful and stateless. So this Azure NSGs by default is a stateful. Now whenever we create a VM, by default it is having for example, if I go back and log into the portal, last time we created Windows machines and Linux machines. So when we created Windows machine, we allowed port number, RDP port number, and when we created Linux, we allowed port number called 22, so that we can able to access it from the external world. So same way, I will try to create a VM. I don't create, but I'll just show you the first page. So whenever I select test VM, and here if I select East to US, sorry, here East to US, and if I select the image, this is a Linux image, and down if you see allowed selected ports is a 22, which means we are allowing 22 port number. So whenever we try to create a VM, automatically at the time it will create this one NSG by default, and in that NSG this 22 port is allowing. That's the reason from external world we are able to connect to this machine through SSH with the help of public IP, right? So now there are two ways, like one thing, at the time of creating this virtual machine, default one NSG is also getting created, or else don't create NSG while virtual machine is getting created. You create a NSG separately, and whatever the rules you want to apply in the NSG, you attach it to the VM later on. That is also possible. So first we'll see the scenario. So now this is a like a vnet, and we have assumed only two subnets inside this one. So two subnets. In these two subnets, assume multiple VMs. We'll take one example, one VM, but in one subnet there will be multiple VMs as usual. So this is as of now simple setup. So this is a VM, and this is also VM, and this is a subnet, because we need to create vnet and inside that subnets, and then this is a vnet. And same way we have another, because I'm taking multiple scenarios. So same way we have one more vnet. Assume these two are having a kind of a peering connection. Okay, so this way and this way both are having peering. Peering is enabled, same like yesterday, because I want communication from these VMs to these VMs also. Now here, whenever a VM is trying to access from here to here or here to here, because of this peering, they can able to communicate easily. And now NSG comes here. Whatever the NSG we are trying to create, this is the NSG. And through internet, this is also one of the scenario. VM can go and access the internet, and from VM also from outside also we are trying to connect to this VM. So here in the NSG, whenever we are creating a VM, automatically NSG is getting created, and we are allowing port 22. So through internet, we are able to access this VM because in NSG port 22 is allowed. Now, first of all, what is this port? You need to understand. Those who don't know what is this port concept. So now we need to understand this port concept first of all. Then easily you can understand the next coming session. Okay. So now port basically will have two types of ports: physical port and software ports. Physical port means everyone in their house they're having Wi-Fi router. That Wi-Fi router backside you have a physical ports. So you can plug in some cables, and in real time switches is having ports. So you can plug in the cable, the other end you will connect to the machines. What is the purpose of that? For communication purpose, right? From one server to the another server for communication purpose, you are having some ports. That is called the physical port. You can see that this is as like software sockets we can call, and we can call it as a port. What is the purpose of these software ports? Why? Because in operating system, like if I take one machine, and in this machine it can be a virtual machine or it can be a physical server, doesn't matter, because this ports concept is available once this operating system has been introduced. So you will install the operating system, and most of you know operating system, it's not like our basic Windows 10 or XP kind of operating system. It contains a server operating system, means lot of services are there which will serve. Like in operating system you have a FTP, SSH, DNS services, Samba services, like many services will provide by the operating system, server operating systems, whether it may be Linux or whether it may be Windows. That's why we call it as a server operating system. On top of that, apart from the operating system, we run applications, Java application, Node.js application, .NET application, Python application, that is separately. These are like OS related services, right? So if this machine is installed with the operating system, and it is, and we also installed FTP software inside it, and FTP service is running. What is the purpose of FTP? File transfer protocol. So what it will do, you can pull the files and you can push the files. You can download the files to your local machine or wherever you want, or you can upload the files. That is the purpose of an FTP. If it is a Linux machine, how you will download the file from the Linux machine? If you have FTP services running inside it, then you can able to download it. And same way, by default, this is in Linux OS. So SSH services also will be running by default to access this server. Like till yesterday we were connecting to this server through HTTP, sorry, SSH. And also this is on some application server. So application is also running, because we create Linux machine not only to just run the operating system, to run some applications. Some Java application is running. So now this machine is having one IP 10.1.1.15. Now one user want to access this one. Now one user want to access FTP. So he want to access FTP and he want to download some files. And some other user want to access a Java application. And someone user want to connect to the SSH. With the IP, they can reach to the machine. But how they can specifically access this FTP service? It is not possible, because with the IP they can reach to the machine. You can do the ping service, but I want only to access FTP service among all these services. So how to access that specific FTP? Very simple example. Like we have very big gated community. In lot of apartments are there, hundreds of people are living, and this is having some address. Like for example, my home hub in Hyderabad. This is a gated community. This is one address. Now I'll tell you to my friend to come to this my home so that he can meet me. He will come to this place, but how he is going to recognize me? There is no communication. Like he cannot able to reach me. Now he want to reach me. How he will reach? So I should tell him in which flat I am going to stay. So if I am staying in 140 flat number, then after reaching my home, only specifically if you want to contact me, then he should come to my flat 140 number. Among these, like lot of hundreds of flats are available. Now same way, this IP address is like an address to this machine, but to reach individual service, it should have some number. then whoever trying to access, they will directly go and access that particular service. So that's why whenever, if you remember, I'm giving SSH connection here to log into the Linux machine, I'm not only just giving the IP address, I am selecting the port 22 here. So it will go and talk to the SSH service and it is allowing me to log into that server. If it is an FTP, if I select here FTP port 21, so FTP is using port 21 as a number, service number. So whenever if I use this host, the IP address and the credentials, then it will go and talk to the FTP service, and then I can use the FTP download and upload the files. The same way here. That's why port numbers concept has been introduced. So with a single IP, inside that multiple you can connect, but you should have the port number of each and every service. And by default, whatever the OS ports are there, like reserve some ports for the operating system services. And I will show you uh, ports in Linux. Find port numbers in Linux. If you see some port numbers, where are there any port numbers that did not mention? Most common. A port in Linux is a virtual concept that helps in accessing different services within a network. It is 16-bit integer ranging from 0 to 65,535. Totally, as per calculation, these many port numbers are available. So from this 1024, 1210T4 is reserved for the operating system related ports. And yeah, both for Windows and Linux. Okay, someone shared me the link so that it will be easy to access. Agreed. Yeah, if you see here, these are the from port 1, these are the port numbers. If you see 22 is for SSH, 21 is for FTP, 23 is for telnet. These are default operating system related port numbers. So if any of these service is running in the operating system, then we should connect to that service with that specific port numbers. Apart from 1024, we use port numbers for our application. As I said, Java is developers are going to build that Java application and they will define one port number, and they can define what are the port number they want. They can use 2000 or maybe 1521 or maybe 3000, any number they will define that. And once the Java application is ready, when the Java service is started, then this port number will come online, and whoever trying to access this Java application, they should give IP along with the IP 1.1.15 this way. Then only they can reach this specific Java application with the help of this IP address. Later on, this will be created as a domain name, so that whenever you just type www. Some abc.com, then backend it will reach this IP and port number. You can able to access. That is in DNS concept. We'll discuss about that. So as of now, this way it will work. So to access any ports, like we'll use the IP address and the port numbers of that particular specific service. And in real world, there will be a database server will be there. Database is also running, and database team, what they'll do, they will configure some database port number, like for example 1521 or 1522 inside the database, and whenever the database is started, that port is going to become online. And if application want to access database or database want to access application, they will define the IP address and the port number, so that there will be communication is going to happen. That is how it is going to work. This is the purpose of the ports. So now we are talking about allowing and blocking these ports, because by default everyone can able to access everything. When you create a VM, by default everyone can able to access everything. That's the reason we want to block it now. So now by default here, this the help of this NSG, whenever we create a VM, automatically this NSG is getting created. Once this NSG is getting created, it is applying some default rules, which will show that by default you can go and access anything, and from outside also anything can come and access our machine. That way it is defined by default. But we need to modify those rules. How we'll modify that, we'll see now. So now what I'm going to do, mm, we'll go now. I'll create a VM without a NSG. Understood? Like in the networking tab, if you see here, NSG is showing basic, none, and advanced, right? I will select none so that NSG will not get created. Or else I'll go and show you the existing NSG. When I created a VM automatically, and if you, I selected one of the VM which we created yesterday, and in the networking tab, if you see here, inbound rules, outbound rules. So you can able to see inbound and outbound rules. So this NSG, network security group, orange RG underscore VM NSG attached to the NIC card of this orange VM. So if you click on this NSG, this is an NSG which automatically got created. So now in this NSG, inbound rules and outbound rules. So we need to focus on these two. So as of now, we are talking about incoming rules. So here, if you see inbound rules, by default, when we created the VM, these are the rules are going to be applied. And this rule, why it got applied? Because at the creation time, I asked, I want to connect port 22. So that's why it automatically created this rule and it's allowed. Understood? So now in this NSG, we need to talk about the first tab, priority. So this priority, by default, they mentioned 65,000, 65,001, 65,500. These are the numbers they provided. And the first rule is allow vnet inbound. Any means any port number. And this is a name. You can give any name. By default, they give you this name to understand easily. Protocol, TCP or UDP protocol, any protocol. Source is virtual network, destination is virtual network. Like while discussing about vnet creation, I told you generally in vnet, if you create multiple subnets, then VM from one subnet to VM to another subnet should not able to communicate as per the subnetting terminology. But here we can able to communicate VM from one subnet to the VM to another subnet. Why? Because this is a reason. NSG is allowing it. If you see here, source means virtual network. Virtual network means this is a virtual network. And so VM can able to connect to the any VM from this VNet. So virtual network. Destination is also virtual network. So within that VNet, VM can go and communicate to any port, to any VM in the any of the subnet. So that's the reason, because of this rule, they can able to communicate. If this rule is not available, then they cannot able to communicate. So by default, they are providing this rule. They did not mention any single subnet name here. If they mentioned source is my subnet and destination is my subnet, then it will connect only those subnet range only. But here they mentioned complete virtual network. So means complete VNet. Source is also this one, destination is also this one. So what are the subnets? If you create more subnets also, you are creating all those subnets in the same VNet, which means all can communicate. That is the reason they can able to communicate. And this will talk about when we talk about the load balancer concept. This rule is created. And deny all bond. Deny means here also it mentioned any port, any means anything will be denied. But this rule is not getting applied. Why? Because here this is very important priority. whichever is a lower number, then it will apply first. Whichever the number is higher number, then its priority is low. So here 65,000 is lower than 65,500. That's why this rule is applied, and it will don't apply this rule. It is not denying. If you delete this rule, then it will apply this rule. Or else on top of this, you create a new rule which is lower value than this number and mention that deny all, then it will deny everything. That is how it will work. So here by default it took 1000 number to allow SSH 22 TCP and source any, destination any. So now what we are going to do here, now what we need to do, so by default from here to here, or maybe see from internet, very rarely we will access the VMs. Usually internally only, from this VM to this VM or this VM to this VM only we will able to access. Internal communication is more compared to internet. Why? Because if this machine is having public IP, then only it is possible to communicate from the internet. But in real world, each and every VM doesn't have a public IP. If 1000 machines are there in your organization or in your project, only 10 to 20 machines will have public IPs, which needs to be accessed from the internet. Remaining all will be in the private IPs only. So when if it is having private IP, then no one can able to connect from the internet. But I am taking this multiple scenarios. Internally also when you are trying to connect, or from externally also if you are trying to connect to this machine. That is the only purpose. But mostly the traffic will come from the internal servers only. So now what I'm going to do, I will create a new VM, and while creating that VM, I will not select to assign an NSG, and then I will show you how what will happen. So go to the VM, create a virtual machine, and whenever you are creating this virtual machine, always remember already vnet is available or not. If vnet is not available, then during this VM creation, automatic one vnet will also get created. If you already creates a vnet first, then launch this VM also in the same vnet. So test VM, and east US, sorry, here I need to select east US, and Ubuntu image, and here I will give the password cloud free, and this is a password, and here I'm going to give none here, because anyhow I'm not going to create an NSG, then there is no point in using this port allow. So in the next tab, disks, so I'll use a standard, and apart from that anything is there important? Nothing is there. Next important thing is networking tab here. So as of now I don't have a vnet, because the vnet which is available in the west US, but this VM I'm creating in the east US, so that's why there is no existing vnet. So it's going to create a new vnet. Let it create, and I want public IP, so that I want to access it from the external world, and this time I'm selecting none. No network security group. Don't create a security group now. So if you see, all ports on this virtual machine may be exposed to the public internet. This is a security risk. Use a network security group to limit. So if you know security group means what? It is not going to block. Anyone can command access to any port to your server. Understood? But use a network security group to limit public access to specific ports. You can also select a subnet that already has network security groups defined, or remove the public IP address. Okay. So now I'm not going to create any NSG here, and delete public IP when VM is deleted. Load balancing is also not required, and remaining tabs not interested, only in the networking tab, review, and create. So now VM is getting created. Once this VM is getting created, I will try to access from my laptop to access this server. So deployment is in progress. NSG is not going to be created. Krishna is saying your voice is breaking. Is it for everyone? Is it my voice breaking? Okay. So in the meantime, what I'll do, I'll go and I'll create an NSG. So to create an NSG, again in the search bar, come here. You just search with NSG. You can see network security group. Come here and create a new security group here. So VM got created. Let it be, or else let's go to the VM first. So instead of confusion, we'll go to the VM, test VM, networking. So no NSG is attached here by default. Understood? So now what I'm going to do, home, NSG, I'll create an NSG, create resource group, maybe I'll use this one, name, Galaxy NSG underscore 01. This is the NSG name I'm creating. Review and create. If I don't attach an NSG to the VM, then directly I can go and access anything from the server, any port. But if I attach an NSG, then at least it will block, okay, from the internet, especially from the internet. Go to the resource. So this is an NSG. So as usual, in the inbound 65,000, the same 3 ports are available. There is no SSH is allowed in this one. So what I'm going to do, I need to add this NSG to the VM which I created. So how can I do that? Two ways. Go to the VM and add an NSG, or from sitting here also I can add the NSG. And here if you see network interfaces, click on here. Obviously we'll attach the NSGs to the network interfaces of the VMs. So here select network interface, associate, and network interface. You see test VM 787. This is a nickname of the VM which I created just now. So select this. Okay. So once this is associated, again we can go back and check in the VM whether this is associated or attached to the VM or not. Close this, go to the home virtual machines, and this is the test VM networking. And if you see network interface name, test VM 787, and you got Galaxy NSG01 is attached to this VM. So now internally they can communicate. Those rules are by default available, but from external world you cannot able to reach to access this VM. So let's try that. Go to the overview, take the public IP and session SSH, give the public IP and use the username Cloud Freak, and okay. I cannot able to access the VM because port 22 is not allowed in the SSG. So here, if 22 is blocked from the internet, then I cannot able to go and access. If it is an internal VM, then I might have go and access it. But again, it depends whether all the ports are available or not. But from the internet, I cannot able to go and able to access it. So if I see here, no connection timeout, then again I'll go here and to the networking and inbound. Here, if you see inbound, add inbound rule. Here I'll click on inbound. So now source, I'm going to create a new rule here in the NSG. So this is very important. NSG is to main purpose is to allow or block to whom you want to block, to whom you want to allow, to which port you want to block, which port you want to allow. These are the four things, very important. So now source, who is the source? Who is trying to access? If it is from the internet, then anyone can come and access. So I will give any as of now. And if it is an internal communication, then you can mention that particular IP range over there. Then you need to select IP address and select particular subnet. For example, this vnet belongs to some networking range, right? If you are giving 172.16.0.0 something like this IP range you need to give, so that whatever the machines are inside this subnet, all they can able to access. That way you can give. If you don't know, then proceed with the any source port range. From my side, I can use any port to come and access your server to specific ports. So you can use star by default. Destination means what? Here always remember source and destination means source means whoever trying to access. If I am trying to access, and destination means server. This is server is called as a destination, and this is called source. Means whoever trying to access is called as a source. Where we are trying to access, to whom we are accessing, they are called destination. If server is accessing me, then I will become as a destination and server will become as a source, vice versa. So here we are trying to access the server. So this is called destination and this is called source here. So source information, what we are giving, I don't know, like I'm trying to access. Now I will give the IP, so you guys can also access. So anyone is trying to come and access. So that's why I provide any. Destination means if you want to give specific this machine IP address also, you can give destination IP addresses or CIDR ranges. Both ways means that network range you want to give, the complete network range you give, or else you want to give specific VM IP address, then only for that VM only it will go and give provide the access. Or else if you mention any, then it can be anything. Means destination it will be any IP, any network. Cancel. Why it is showing? What happened? Trying to access. Okay, again I'll go back and I'll go to the test VM and networking and then add inbound rule. So I'm giving source any because we don't know who are trying to access, like from my IP, from other IP. Destination as of now we are not giving an IP. Later we practice with the providing specific IP also. And service by default OS related services are provided here. And if it is like application server, it means Java application, then Java will use their own port number, whatever they want. At that time, you need to mention this custom and give the port number of whatever is defined in that machine by the developers. So you need to define that particular port number. But as of now, we are trying to connect what SSH. So it is a default one. So we can see here default SSH, where it is, this one, SSH. So default 22 port number, and you want to allow, yes, I want to allow, and I don't want 100, I want it will be like 200 priority, and name, allow any SSH inbound. You can give your own name also. And if you see here, port is export to the internet. This is only recommended for testing. For production environments, we recommend using a VPN or private connection. So if we give this one rule, then from internet, you can come and access, add, creating a rule. So rule is created. Now let me try once again. I'll just do Shift R, whether it will try to access. Still, it is taking time. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes it will take. Okay, again I'll try. SSH. See, it is accepting and it is asking the password. Now I can able to connect. So this way you are allowing the rules. So with the help of these rules, you need to provide like to whom you want to give access, to whom you want to block. This way we can able to provide it. So now if you see here, basically this is for the internet only. Internally, by default, you no need this rule. Even though this rule is not available, still it can go and access the this VM from sitting from this VM. If I do SSH to this VM, we can able to access. It doesn't expect this specific rule. Why? Because here by default is vnet inbound, port any, protocol any, virtual network is there. Means within this vnet, all these subnets whatever we create and all the VMs which we are create, any port internally they can able to access. Now whatever the rule which I applied, this is from the internet, not for internal VMs. Until unless if you delete this rule, then for internally also they cannot able to communicate. Why? Because you deleted this one. So even in the same subnet, forget about another subnet, in the same subnet also, this VM is also created in this subnet. This can also able to cannot reach this VM. They cannot able to communicate each other. Why? Because this vnet inbound is not available. So if this you remove, and if you try to access 22 this VM, you cannot able to access. With the help of this new rule which I added, then from this machine to this machine, they can able to communicate. So that is how it will work. So now what is the rule I applied? This is for only from the internet, you can go and access to the VM with the specific that port number. Yes, NSG is within the VNet and firewall is for external only. But as of now, just now the example which I shown you, once like in the firewall session, when we talk about firewall, then what it comes, uh, then this will become like a, sorry, this will become here, and here will come, the picture will come to the firewall. Okay. So that time we'll talk about firewall. Firewall is for all. So as of now, we are talking this NSG for this particular VM. But because of this rule, as I mentioned, right now we don't have any firewall. So anyone can come and access. So once we put the firewall, then no one can come inside. But right now we don't have firewall. So that's why from internet, we can able to access the VMs to the specific ports. So Till that time, our NSG itself acts like a firewall. Yeah, Krishna, is there any difference between NSG and firewall? Yes, there is a big difference in NSG and firewall. As I mentioned previously also, if you have a very big gated community, like independent gated villas houses, right? So your independent house is like a VM, and you are keeping a security guard only specifically to your home for security purpose. That is NSG. Overall total your gated community is having one security, like they will allow or deny there itself, the gate itself, main gate itself, because whoever going to inside, they can go to the any flat, right? So any villa, so they are like a firewall, and individual security guard who is working in front of your house is like an NSG. He will block anyone to come into your home and he will allow, but main firewall is like he can come, like he is going to allow to any villa. Okay, whoever is having providing authority to allow them to a specific villa, he will send to that particular villa to send that person who is trying to come. That is the difference. Understood? In suppose we want to block SSH port internal as well, then as I mentioned, you should remove this rule. Okay, this rule should be not there, or else on top of this you cannot delete by default these rules. On top of this, what you need to do, you need to mention deny all, create a rule deny all, then automatically everything will be denied. Or else you can mention uh, like this way, add inbound rule, source uh, service tag virtual network. Actually, I supposed to tell about the service tag now after this. So this way you need to tell. I will explain now service tag. Then both will be covered. So what is service tag will also will covered, and your query will also will get covered. Understood? So this way we can provide access here through this way. What are the rules you are applying? You can able to block it. Understood? Allow or deny. Now we'll talk about service tag. Service tag means when you are trying to create a rule in the source, it is showing multiple options. Tomorrow we have a separate session for this application security group, and we discussed what is any. Now any means anyone can come and access, or anyone will be blocked. That is called any. IP address means source. You can specifically give the source IP address. This is source, right? If you want to give only this machine's IP address over there in the rule, and destination also, this machine's destination IP address. So this way, this machine's IP address, source machine IP address, and destination IP address, or maybe network, the complete CIDR range or CIDR range. If you want to give, you can give the network range. Anyway, it will work. If you see here, or network range, or maybe IP address, you can give. So that way only this rule is for that particular IP or IP range. And the third option is my IP address. So source IP address automatically took my public IP. I think this is my public IP. Automatically took. If you go into the Google and type what is my IP, then it will show your public IP. So I think automatically took my public IP. Means we'll practice this concept also in like after maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Understood? And now we'll talk about service tag. What is this service tag? So service tag, see, we are talking about virtual machines. Virtual machines will have IP addresses. But in Azure, there are separate virtual appliances also available, like storage accounts, um, Azure backup. For example, if I say here, backup, Azure backup. This is a service. It doesn't have a one dedicated IP or specific IP. Backend it will keep on changing the IPs. So we don't go with the IP. If this backup service want to communicate with the specific VMs, then we should select service tags here. So not only to the VMs and destination also you can select service tag, and this backup service want to access another some kind of service. If you select here, lot of other services is there based upon the region and uh, geographical location. If you see API management UAE North, API management UAE Central, like if you see, so specific service if they want to access, and in API service also in coming sessions we'll talk about that specific service. So it doesn't have a dedicated IPs. So those services want to communicate, then also you can provide access with the help of this method. And just now someone asked if we want to block that, and then what we can do, here we have a virtual network, this one, port range 22, and destination also service tag, and destination also I'll select this one, and port is also here I'll select 22. Now if I apply this rule, even if I mention it as a deny, then what will happen, internally also these VMs cannot able to access from this VM to this VM. It will not have access only port 22. This VM cannot able to go and access that port 22. If you don't want only port 22 between these VMs across this vnet, that's how you can able to create that. Understood? That way we can try. So that is about the service tag. This is about the service tag, and tomorrow we'll talk about this application security group. It's a separate big concept. We'll discuss what is the advantage of application security group. So now you understand, right, how we need to create these rules. So whenever you are giving a priority to any rule, don't give immediate numbers. Like next rule, if you are trying to create, don't give 201. Why? Because based upon this rule, you want to apply some other rules also. So if you give immediately 201 rule, then sometimes you want to give 201 rule priority for one of the rule which are creating, which is related to this one. So if it doesn't have that number available, then it will go to the 202. So sometimes it will may not apply. So always you need to give some 10 to 20 numbers gap between each rule. So whenever it required, it it expects some number in between of that. So that's why don't give immediate numbers. That's why they'll give like 65,500 this way. Okay. So because of this rule only, internally they can communicate to any port, any VM. Understood? So now we'll talk about stateful and stateless. So what is this stateful set and stateless set? So now whenever from here I'm trying to access this machine to the port 22, then immediately I'm getting response because here inbound is allowed. So this is majorly depend on the inbound and outbound. Based on this concept only, we call it as a stateful. So Azure NSG is stateful. Now from here I'm trying to access port 22 to a VM, and it is giving me the prompt to provide the password. I provided the password and I logged in. So that is called incoming. And when it is coming out, you no need to write any rule in the outbound to come out. That is called stateful. So once it is allowed for the incoming, then outbound rule is not required. Means in outbound, you no need to mention that 22 allowed, then only it will go come here. Basically in um, ACL, AWS, when if trying to access one port, outbound also you need to allow that port number. In outbound also you need to mention 22 port number, then only user will get that login prompt. Otherwise, it will be blocked here. It cannot bring that page. Like for example, if I'm for example, if I type flipkart.com, when I'm trying to access this, it's allowing me going to the web server and bringing me the web page. While bringing this web page to me, outbound, I'm coming out. So it is allowing me to get access this one. If outbound is blocking, even though inbound is allowed, but while bringing connected the web server and bringing the web page to show in front of my browser, if outbound is blocking, then I cannot able to get this web page. That is how it will work. But stateful means outbound is not required. Outbound is not required. Once incoming is allowed, immediately you get whatever you want. Only one side is enough. So in the Azure, if this NSG is stateful, then why we have uh, this outbound concept? So why we have this outbound rules here? Then what is the purpose of this outbound rules? These outbound rules is for this specific VM, which means whoever trying to access from the outside, whether it from this VM to this VM or from the internet to this VM, so whoever trying to access to specific service, for them it is not required outbounding to come out. But this VM, when it is trying to reach someone else, intentionally it will go and try to access internet, or maybe this VM is trying to access this VM. Then if I mention outbound 22 deny, or maybe if I mentioned outbound 80 or 443, these are ports for HTTP and HTTPS websites. If I mention this, then this VM cannot go and access the internet. So this outbound rules, whatever it is mentioned, is for specifically will apply to this VM. That's why outbound rules is mentioned. Understood? Stateless means what? You need to apply rule for inbound, and same rule you should apply for outbound to come out. That is stateless. But our NSG is not stateless. It is stateful. So once incoming is allowed, outgoing you need to mention. But this outbound rule is only for this VM. Understood? Kind of request. Yeah, correct. Request and response. So request means this, from sitting from here, we are accessing, we are requesting, and it is giving the response, and that response should be visible to our side without any problem. So outbound will not stop you. It will not check whether 22 is allowed or not. You will get the response. But this outbound specifically is for this VMs. We'll test now. So by default, we are in this VM, right? Now I'll just do ping google.com. I can able to access the internet with the help of this ping google.com. Means if ping response is coming, then I can able to reach the internet. Now what I'm going to do, I will go to the outbound rules, add outbound rule. Source, as of now, it's a single VM. You can give the VM IP address here, or else you can give any. And then destination, I'm giving any, and custom service, and I will give star here. Where is star? You can give 80 and 443 also, because to google.com it might be HTTP and HTTPS only. Obviously, 80 or 443 port numbers you need to block, but I'll give destination any as of now. So this is deny, and this I'll give 200. And now deny any custom, any outbound. So here, no port I mentioned, everything will be blocked because I'm giving priority is 200. So it will come on top of this one. Allow vnet outbound. And if you see here, allow internet outbound. Incoming, this is not there because it's an incoming. Allow internet outbound means to go and access the internet. Any port, anywhere you can go destination internet, it is allowed. But now what I have done, deny any outbound. Everything is blocked now, deny. And priority is also 200. I can just go and try now ping google.com. I cannot able to go outside. So this way you can block the outgoing of VMs by applying the outbound rules. It can be like VMs of the other subnets or VMs of the same subnets, doesn't matter. Based on that, it will work. Okay. Now, one more final example we'll see. And what I'm going to do in the same VM, again, I'll remove that rule. What are the rule I created? Like outgoing, yeah, no, though I will not delete it. So what I'll do, one more final testing. I will I will install a Nginx here inside this one. We'll just try to access. So Nginx sudo su hyphen. This is an Ubuntu machine. So we need to use apt command to install any package. So before that, you need to mention apt update to get the latest updates, and then we can use apt install Nginx. So Nginx is a web server, ingress controller, multiple things it will work, but we want to just access the web page of the Nginx through the internet. So that we will see. I will show you. Like till now we were discussing any, right? Now I'll show you by providing a specific IP, then only I can able to access it. Remaining guys cannot able to access it. That how we can provide to specific IP. We'll see now. What happened? Could not connect. Okay. When I typed apt update, it cannot able to reach the internet. That's why it is throwing error. So what I need to do? I need to remove this rule so that it can reach internet and download the packages. It's deleted. And let me try once again. Apt update connecting to azure.archive.ubuntu.com. And it's almost time is completed, but few more things I want to discuss about this NSG. One important thing. Once I finish this, another important thing I will tell about this NSG, or else tomorrow I'll continue with that and then we'll jump into the ASGs. Yeah, now it is getting connected. Okay, apt install Nginx. Yes, I want to install Nginx. Nginx is installed and etc init.d Nginx status. It's active, up and running to see this service. So let me go and try to access this one. I'll take the public IP of this virtual machine, test VM, and where is the public IP? This is a public IP. I'm trying to access through the internet, but I cannot able to access. Why? Because in the NSG port 80 is not allowed. So HTTP web service run on port 80 by default. If you see here, netstat-ntlp, if you check listening ports, port 80 is running by this Nginx, but 80 port is in not allowed state in the NSG rule to access from the internet. So that's why we need to allow. So I'll go here and networking, and there add inbound rule, source any. As of now, I'll give source any, source port range star, and destination is also any service. Where is HTTP? This is the one HTTP port 80 automatically chosen, and I want to allow, and priority is 210. Now I'll add it. So after adding this rule, then I can able to access from the internet the web page which is installed on this machine Nginx. So once it is done, let me go and try. So it's taking some time to apply the rule. Now if you see here, welcome to Nginx, this is a page. So this is how we are going to able to provide the rules. And quickly what I'm going to do, I will tweak this rule now. How long it will take to apply? Maybe less than 1 minute. Slowly they are improving their performance. Previously it used to take a lot of time, but now within less than 1 minute itself, the rules are getting applied. And now what I'm going to do, I'll change this. Uh, 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 Source is my IP address. Understood? And now I'll just save it. And then I will give the public IP of this to you guys. So you try from your end. We'll see. Updated. And then see, Nginx is like a HTTP service in the Linux. HTTP is for what? Web server configuration. If you want to configure any websites, all these things. But we are not building any web servers here. And Nginx is used for multiple purpose. Ingress controller, web server, right? But we are not configuring all those things just to get that page to understand the rules. Instead of taking single example SSH, another example, so that that web server can able to access from the internet. That is the only reason I took the Nginx example, because we cannot really create a application and install inside that and start it and access it from the internet. Instead of doing all this stuff, the same thing, just install a web server, access it from the internet. Sravsp, I think you got it. And now again I'll try to access it. I can able to access. I'll go to the incognito mode and I'll try to access it. I can able to access, right? Still, I think it will take 1 minute to apply the rule. Now I'll ping the IP to you guys. You just try and let me know whether you guys can able to access. You should not access because I mentioned source is only my IP address here. Source is only my IP address. Then only this person can able to access. Remaining anyone cannot able to access because source it is mentioned only single IP address. So now you try. You should not able to access it. You can able to access. I instead of HL you made SSH rule. Oh, sorry. Where it is? Yeah, correct, man. This rule I need to provide. Source my IP address. Correct. Destination HTTP. Thank you. Thanks for the correction. And now you can like just give 1 minute of time and refresh your cookies and try in incognito mode. Uh, you should not get the cache. So try in incognito mode and just check it whether you can able to get it or not. Ganesh Kumar, any DDoS protection related security available at network level? DDoS and a web application firewall, we have a separate session. There you will we'll discuss more about it. Okay. Here again, people will get confused. What is this DDoS? All these things. Raja, now it's blocked. Still able to access. Yeah, yeah, guys, you need to refresh. Try an incognito mode or delete your cache cookies. Still accessing. You should not able to access because the source is. Mhm. Just a minute. Actually, let me check Google. What is my IP? Yeah, this is a 118, and then let's keep on changing the IP. Destination, any source. So source I did not mention any. So then definitely you should not able to reach it. Yeah, now not able to access. Maybe it took some time to apply the rule. So now you should not able to have access. So this is how you need to define which one to whom you want to give access. Destination also you can provide instead of any. Any means what? Inside this all the machines it will apply. So we don't do that. We will give specific IPs to whom you exactly you want to deny, to whom exactly you want to follow. That you need to mention here, like to whom you want to block. If it is an IP address, then provide the IP address of that machine. Then only it will specifically to that machine. These things you can do R&D when you do lab practice, right? Then after finishing whatever I showed you, apart from that, you can do some R&D. Okay, let's take two servers. In one server, we'll give the address here, and we'll try from the another server. This kind of R&D you can do. Then you can explore a lot by using all these options. Understood? And one important thing I would like to tell here, this NSGs, basically this NSGs, whenever you create a VM, automatically it is creating this NSG. But in real time, we don't do that. We'll create NSG separately and we'll attach the NSGs to a VM. And now, these NSGs can be attached to a subnet also. NSGs, you created an NSG, and this NSG you associate to a VM or you associate to a subnet. If you are associating to a subnet, then that rule will be applied to all the VMs. In this subnet, you have 251 IPs. Assume 251 IPs are available, and you created 200 VMs inside this subnet, and you associated one NSG to this subnet, and you mentioned some whatever it may be 22 or 80 port blocked. Then it will apply to all the VMs. Subnet level, it will apply. So, but we don't prefer this way. Why? Because one NSG you are applying to a subnet and you are using 22 or 80 port number, but it doesn't mean that all the 200 machines is using 80 port number. then unnecessary you are blocking it. And might be some machines are using 443 or some other port numbers, and they are all allowed. So instead of that, individual NSG should be applied to individual VM, because one VM is running with some Java application which is 1521 port number. Another VM might be running with the some 3000 port number. So each VM should have their own rules, NSG rules apply or allow or deny rules. Then only it is very good practice. Instead of using one subnet for a one NSG for a subnet, we should have a individual NSGs for individual VMs. And one more important thing is, you cannot attach more than one NSG to a VM. If one NSG is there, you cannot attach one more NSG to a VM. That is also very important point. Understood? So if anything is left tomorrow, I'll start with that, and then we'll go with the related topic only. Application security group. What is the difference between NSG and ASG? Tomorrow we'll talk. So I suggest tomorrow from morning onwards, please do the practice so that ASG can be easily understandable. Otherwise, little bit confusion. It's very simple. Once you do the practice, just allowing the rules, tweaking the rules, then you can try to do R&D, right? Take the Linux machines very cheaper and use it. For these NSG rules, they are not going to charge anything. Only for VMs they will charge you. So please do practice. In the meantime, if possible, I will answer a few questions by allowing 22 port in inbound. Then only we can connect to server. But when you deny in outbound rules with any port, any destination, even then we are able to connect to server. Why? That's why I mentioned in stateful, when you request sends for returning the response, it is not going to expect the rule in the outbound. It doesn't check, it will come out. The request will come to the user. That is the reason of this. We call this as a stateful. If it is a stateless, then in the outbound also the same rule should be applied. Then only it will allow to get that request. Sai Akil. One subnet also only one NSG applied. Yes. Do we have an hierarchy for an NSG? Hierarchy of NSG means NSG rules numbers are automated. Rules in the sense priority numbers we are talking, Shashi Kumar. Priority numbers we need to provide. By default, it will give suggest you a number. If you don't want, you can edit it and you can provide your own number also, priority number. Oh, what is SSH? Then you should learn Linux quickly, Krishna. As soon as possible, you should learn Linux, because Linux is a base for all the courses. Azure, AWS, DevOps, machine learning, business, what is that called? Data science. Any course you want to learn, Linux is a base. So SSH is a secure shell service to access the Linux server. So which runs inside the Linux. So it will allow you to access the Linux machine. Which source are we using in real time? Obviously, we use the IP address, select the IP address and provide the network range. So we always use in the real time network range as a source IP address and network range of the destination IP address range, CIDR, the network range, so that they both can able to communicate. Most of the rules. Sometimes we may give IP to IP, or maybe some network range to one IP or one IP to network range, vice versa also give. Mostly it will be like network ranges only we will give. What are best practices for rules? Just try, see, uh, As I mentioned, this is only for as of now. We are giving what the rules we are giving. It is useful only to the internet, right? Now, uh, don't create any rules here. Okay, just don't allow 22, don't allow 80, and then in the same subnet or in another subnet, create a VM and try to do SSH and the private IP of that machine. Don't give public IP and see whether you can able to access or not. And also install Nginx in this machine and try to access from this VM with the help of curl command, curl and the IP of that machine, or else maybe ping you can do whether you can able to access, and then you go and remove this rule. As I mentioned, don't remove, you cannot remove this rule. On top of this, create a rule to block 22 and 80 for complete, as I shown, service stack, virtual network. Then again you go back and try to access from this VM to this VM to SSH. So internally, how to block the specific port to access from one VM to this VM. This is one good practice. This way you can do that. Service tag once more briefly. Service tag, yeah, I'll explain. Service tag, like I'm going to create a new rule. Now here, as I mentioned here, IP address. IP address means, I will take a nice example like mm, uh, we have many VMs, and these VMs are having, these all are VMs. All these VMs are having IPs. Okay, so this IPs address you can provide some network range 10.1.0.0/24. This is the IP range. So this, if you want, you can give it here. So all these IPs may be from one VNet, and same way you have another VNet or maybe another network, different range 10.2.0.0/24, and they want to communicate to here. Then destination, what you'll do, destination also IP address, and you'll give this range 10.2.0, means all the machines from here and all the machines which are available here, you are allowing or denying something, whether it's 22 or any port number. That is the purpose of this rule. IP address means, so all the machines from here, whether you allow or deny, that rule will apply 22 or 80 or whatever it port may be, FTP or whatever it may be. But there is another scenario, is like services are there. Azure is having lot of services, backup service, and virtual network, means that vnet, and storage account, and AKS, Azure Kubernetes service. It is also one of the service. Like this, many services it is having. Now, these VNet guys want to access this AKS service. Only I want to allow to this network guys to access this AKS. AKS doesn't have any specific IP. When you launch Azure Kubernetes service, it will have a URL to access it. It doesn't have any IP in the front end to give here. Then how you are going to give access to these people to access AKS? Then source I will select IP address, and destination I will select service tag, and here I'll go and check where is AKS, Azure Kubernetes service, K, uh, or maybe AKS Kubernetes service. AKS is not mentioned, I think, as of now. Uh, Maybe database, Cosmo DB database. So this is a platform as a service. So this is also doesn't have any IP, specific IP. So if you want to access this database, then we'll select that service name. So directly it will go and access, you will get access to this particular service. So like this, lot of service, if you see Azure container registry is for storing the Docker images. So it is also doesn't have any uh, IP address. It will have a URL to access Azure Container Registry. Then to whom you want to give access to the Azure Container Registry. So specific people, East US, and these guys want to access this container registry. So that's how service tags will come in the picture. And source is also service tag. Some source want to access something like load balancer want to access container registry, then you will select load balancer here, because these all services will have a specific URLs whenever you create it. It doesn't have a front end IP address. Back end IP addresses will keep on change, but front end it will be URL. So you cannot specify one IP over there to provide access. So in that way, they are providing this service tag here. So services can able to communicate or block or deny. That way it will work. I hope it's clear, Ganesh. Yeah, no, not multiple destination tags. Zakir, you can contact to, I'll copy one message and give it to you. You can contact to this admin team about the recordings. You can see the logs. Yeah, you can see the logs. In the activity log, you can able to see. Okay, so I think it's late for you guys, but because for me it's only 6:30 now. Maybe for you it's 10 o'clock. So tomorrow we'll meet, and please do practice. Tomorrow also we'll talk about application security groups. And if I missed any questions, please repeat tomorrow. Then again I'll answer. Today it was like lengthy session. I want to finish in a single session. That's why it took time. Thank you. Have a nice evening.